and speaking of meeting God, you didn't start out as a Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
You have an interesting story of your path is an interesting story in terms of, if you could talk a little bit about what you see as the sort of maybe pivotal points that helped you, maybe lights that were shining that showed a certain way to you. I know you had a teacher in high school that was influential, but and you write really eloquently in the book about your girlhood in Connecticut and the experiences of being on the farm and how rich a life that was in terms of just being tuned into God's world.
Well, except, of course, I wasn't really raised in a very religious way, so I didn't see it as being tuned into God's world. I just saw it as, wow, isn't creation wonderful? And I don't know that I would have called it creation, even. Isn't nature wonderful? Isn't the world beautiful? And I was fortunate to grow up in the country. You know, it wasn't a spectacularly beautiful place, but nature is beautiful wherever you are. It just is, you know. I didn't grow up in an inner city, so I was really blessed in that way. So, and while my mother took me to Sunday school, or sent me to Sunday school, and she went to church sort of Christmas and Easter, it was a UCC church, there wasn't a lot of, you know, formal religious understanding. And so when I got to high school, this was the 60s, and I didn't believe in all that religious stuff. And as I write in the book, I did meet a teacher who was a Catholic and a convert in my senior year, and took a course from him, a college course actually, on the intellectual history of Europe, it was a wonderful gift for me because at one and the same time I was introduced to somebody who really had a faith, a Catholic faith, and who also knew how to think. And so the two came together at the same time, and that's been a blessing.
Now, this was in a public school?
Public, Ellington High School.
How did you know that he was Catholic? How did that come out?
How did that come out? That's a good question. I don't remember. It wasn't in class.
Maybe it was as a consequence of the topics you talked about, the books you
Could
dealt
have been.
with.
I know it was a very small class. There were 9 of us. It was a really unique class, and we all really kind of bonded. And he would invite us occasionally. These were pre-scandal days. He would invite us to his home with his wife and family. We'd have fun. We'd do charades, and we'd do all kinds of things. And somewhere in the course of that, we must have talked about faith, and he handed me a biography of Teresa of Avila, and I'd never heard of much about the Catholic Church or saints, and I'd certainly never heard of contemplative life, but that was it.
That planted a seed.
It did. A big
But
seed.
that's interesting because it sounds like it's planting a couple seeds. It's planting not just a seed towards Catholicism and Christianity, but a seed toward contemplative life, which is not nearly as common a seed.
Well, yes and no. It's certainly not as common in terms of a call to live a specific form of life that we call contemplative religious life. But everyone in their own way has that longing, that yearning, I think, for God's presence. And everyone in their own way is graced with those moments of contemplative presence. So, you know, not that unique, perhaps.
Well, your particular path turned out a little bit differently than many others in that you found yourself in a seminary program.
Well, I did. A Protestant seminary, I should add, Andover Newton. I was there for a year. I finished college, and I actually finished a little ahead of time, sort of to my surprise. I didn't plan it that way. Worked for a year, and the issues of God and religion and faith sort of kept turning, and as I believe I explained, I can't remember, but I believe I explained somewhere in the book, I wanted to have faith but didn't feel that I had. So I had this brilliant inspiration. I'd go to the seminary and figure it out. And that's why I ended up at Andover Newton.
But by coincidence or something else, there was a little Catholic church at the bottom of the hill.
That's right.
And you noticed this place and found yourself going there.
And it wasn't locked. Those were the days.
It wasn't
before
locked.
they were locked. Yes, yes. And also, I should add in there, if we're talking about journeys, just before going off to Andover Newton, I think it was in August of that year, and the seminary began right after Labor Day.